Bruka Theater presents The Yellow Wallpaper, a listening play, adapted from the short story by Charlotte Perkins Gillman.
It is very seldom that mere ordinary people like John and I secure ancestral halls for the summer. A colonial mansion, a hereditary estate. I would say a haunted house, but that would be asking too much of fate. Still, I would proudly declare that there is something queer about it. Else why should it be let so cheaply? And why have stood so long untenanted? John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in marriage. John is practical, in the extreme. He has no patience with faith, an intense horror of superstition, and he scoffs openly at any talk of things not to be felt and seen and put down in figures. John is a physician, and perhaps that is one reason I do not get well faster. You see, he does not believe I am sick. And what can one do? If a physician of high standing and one's own husband assures friends and relatives that there is really nothing the matter with one but temporary nervous depression, a slight hysterical tendency, what is one to do? So I take phosphates or phosphites, whatever it is, and tonics and journeys and air and exercise. And I am absolutely forbidden to work until I am well again. Personally, I disagree. Personally, I believe that congenial work with excitement and change would do me good. But what is one to do? I did write for a while in spite of him, but it does exhaust me a good deal having to be so sly about it or deal with such heavy opposition. I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition and more society and stimulus. But John says the very worst thing I can do is to think about my condition, and I confess it always makes me feel bad. So, I will let it alone and talk about the house. Oh, the most beautiful place. It makes me think of English places that you read about, for there are hedges and walls and gates that lock and lots of separate little houses for the gardeners and people. Oh, there is a delicious garden. I never saw such a garden, large and shady, full of box-bordered paths and lined with long grape-covered arbors with seats under them. Oh, there were greenhouses too, but they're all broken now. There was some legal trouble. I believe something about heirs and co-heirs. Anyway, the place has been empty for years. That spoils my ghostliness, I'm afraid. But I don't care. There is something strange about the house. I can feel it. I even said so to John one moonlit evening, but he said what I felt was a draft and shut the window. I get unreasonably angry with John sometimes. I'm sure I never used to be so sensitive. I think it is due to this nervous condition. But John says if I feel so, I shall neglect proper self-control. So I take pains to control myself. Before him, at least. And that makes me very tired. I don't like our room a bit. Well, I wanted one downstairs that opened on the piazza and had roses all over the window. Oh, such pretty old-fashioned chintz hangings. But John would not hear of it. He is very careful and loving and hardly lets me stir without special direction. I have a scheduled prescription for each hour in the day. He takes all care from me, and so I feel basely ungrateful not to value it more. He said we came here solely on my account, that I was to have perfect rest and all the air I could get. So we took the nursery at the top of the house. It's a big, airy room, the whole floor nearly, with windows that look all ways and air and sunshine galore. It was nursery first, and then playground and gymnasium. I should judge, for the windows are barred for little children, and there are rings and things in the walls. The paint and paper look as if a boys' school had used it. It's stripped off, the paper, in great patches all around the head of my bed, about as far as I can reach, and in a great place on the other side of the room, low down. I never saw worse paper in my life. One of those sprawling, flamboyant patterns committing every artistic sin. It is dull enough to confuse the eye in following, pronounced enough to constantly irritate and provoke study, and when you follow the lame, uncertain curves for a little distance, they suddenly commit suicide. They plunge off at outrageous angles, destroy themselves in unheard-of contradictions. Oh, and the color is repellent, almost revolting. A smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slow-turning sunlight. It's a dull yet lurid orange in some places, a sickly sulfur tint in others. No wonder the children hated it. I should hate it myself if I had to live in this room long. Here comes John. So I must say goodbye until I can find the time to be alone, and we can be together again. We have been here 2 weeks, and I haven't felt like talking before since that first day. I am sitting by the window now up in this atrocious nursery. John is away all day, and even some nights when his cases are serious. Well, I'm glad my case is not serious. But these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there is no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. Of course, it is only nervousness. It does weigh on me so not to do my duty in any way. Well, I am meant to be such a help to John, such a real rest and comfort, and here I am, a comparative burden already. Nobody would believe what an effort it is to do what little I am able, to dress and entertain and order things. It is fortunate that my sister-in-law, Jenny, is so good with the baby, just such a dear baby. And yet I cannot be with him. It makes me so nervous. I suppose John was never nervous in his life. He laughs at me so about this wallpaper. And at first, he meant to repaper the room. But afterwards, he said that I was letting it get the better of me, and that nothing was worse for a nervous patient than to give way to such fancies. He said that after the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bedstead, and then the barred windows, and then that gate at the head of the stairs, and so on, and he is right enough about the beds and the windows and the things. It is as airy and comfortable a room as anyone need wish, and of course, I would not be so silly as to make him uncomfortable. You know, just for a whim. I'm really getting quite fond of the big room. All but the horrid paper. Out of one window, I can see the garden, those mysterious, deep-shaded arbors, the righteous, old-fashioned flowers and bushes and gnarly trees. And out of another, I get a lovely view of the bay and a little private wharf belonging to the estate. Well, there is a beautiful shaded lane that runs down there from the house. I always fancy I see people walking in these numerous paths and arbors. But John, he's cautioned me not to give way to fancy in the least. He says that with my imaginative power and habit of story-making, a nervous weakness like mine is sure to lead to all manner of excited fancies, and that I ought to use my will and good sense to check the tendency. So I try. I wish I could get well faster. But I must not think about that. This paper looks to me as if it knew what a vicious influence it had. There's a recurrent spot where the pattern lolls like a broken neck, and two bulbous eyes stare at you, upside down. I get positively angry with the impertinence of it and the everlastingness. Everlastingness. Up and down and sideways they crawl, and those absurd, unblinking eyes are everywhere. The furniture in this room is no worse than inharmonious, for we had to bring it all from downstairs. I suppose that when this was used as a playroom, they had to take the nursery things out, and no wonder. I never saw such ravages as the children have made here. The wallpaper, as I said, it's torn off in spots. Then the floor is scratched, gouged, and splintered. The plaster itself is dug out here and there, and this great heavy bed, which is all we found in the room, looks as if it had been through the wars. But I don't mind it a bit. Only the paper. This wallpaper has a kind of sub-pattern in it. Different shade. Peculiar, irritating one. For you can only see it in certain lights, and not even clearly then. But in the places where it isn't faded, where the sun, just so. I can see a strange, provoking, formless sort of figure that seems to sulk about behind that silly and conspicuous front design. Here comes John's sisters on the stairs. Such a dear girl she is, so careful of me. Well, the 4th of July is over. The people are gone, and I am tired out. John thought it might do me good to see a little company, so we just had Mother and the children down for a week. Of course, I didn't do a thing. Jenny sees to everything now. But it tired me all the same. I don't feel as if it was worthwhile to turn my hand over for anything, and I'm getting dreadfully fretful and querulous. I cry at nothing. I cry most of the time. Of course I don't when John is here or anybody else. When I am alone, I am alone a good deal. Just now. John is in town very often by serious cases, and Jenny is good. She lets me alone when I want her to. So I walk a little in the garden or down that lovely lane. I sit on the porch under the roses. I lie down up here a good deal. I'm getting really fond of the room in spite of the wallpaper, perhaps because of the wallpaper. It dwells in my mind and solves. I lie here on the great immovable bed. It is nailed down, I believe, and I follow the pattern about by the hour. I start, we'll say at the bottom, down in the corner over there where it has not been touched. And I determine for the 1,000th time that I will follow that pointless pattern to some sort of a conclusion. Because I know a little of the principle of design. And I know this thing was not arranged on any laws of radiation or alternation or repetition or symmetry or anything that I have ever heard of. It is repeated, of course, by the breaths and not otherwise. Looked at in one way, each breath stands alone. The bloated curves and flourishes are kind of debased Romanesque, with delirium tremens. They go waddling up and down in isolated columns of fatuity. But on the other hand, they connect diagonally, and the sprawling outlines run off in great slanted waves of optic horror like a lot of wallowing seaweeds in full chase. And the whole thing, it goes horizontally, too. At least it seems to, and I exhaust myself in trying to distinguish the order of its going in that direction. There is one end of the room where it is almost intact, and there, when the cross lights fade and the low sun shines directly upon it, I can almost fancy radiation after all. The interminable grotesques, they seem to just form around a common center, and then they rush off in headlong plunges of equal distraction. Oh, it makes me tired to follow it. I'll take a nap, I guess. I don't know why I should say this. I don't want to. I don't feel labeled. And I know John would think it's absurd. But I must say what I feel. And I think in some way it is such a great relief. But the effort is getting to be greater than the relief. At the time now, I am awfully lazy. I lie down ever so much. John says I mustn't lose my strength. And he has me take cod liver oil and lots of tonics and things, to say nothing of ale and wine and rare meat. Oh, dear John. He loves me very, very, very dearly and hates to have me sick. I tried to have a real earnest, reasonable talk with him the other day and tell him how I wish he could let me go and make a visit to Cousin Henry and Julia. But he said I wasn't able to go, nor able to stand it after I got there. And I did not make out a very good case for myself, for I was crying before I had finished. And it's just getting to be a great effort for me to think straight. Just this, it's nervous weakness, I suppose. And dear John, he just gathered me up in his arms. And he just carried me upstairs and laid me on the bed and sat by me and read to me until it tired my head. He said that I was his darling and his comfort and all he had, and that I must take care of myself for his sake and keep well. He says that no one but myself can help me out of it, that I must use my will and self-control and not let any silly fancies run away with me. And there's one comfort. The baby. The baby is well and happy and does not have to occupy this nursery with the horrid wallpaper. Oh, never thought of it before. But it is lucky that John kept me here after all. I can stand it so much easier than the baby, you see? There are things in that paper that nobody knows but me, or ever will. Besides, that outside pattern, the dim shapes, get clearer every day. It's always the same shape, only very numerous. And it is like a woman, stooping down and creeping behind that pattern. I don't like it a bit. I wonder, I begin to think, oh God, I wish John would take me away from here. It is so hard to talk with John about my case because he is so wise and because he loves me so. But I tried last night. John was asleep and I hated to waken him. But I kept still and watched the moonlight on that undulating wallpaper till I felt creepy. And the faint figure behind seemed to shake the pattern just as if she wanted to get out. I got up softly. I went to feel it to see if the paper did move. And when I came back, John was awake. And I thought it was a good time to talk. So I told him that I was really not gaining here and that I wished he would take me away. Why, darling, he said, our lease will be up in a few weeks and I can't see how to leave before because the repairs are not done at home and I cannot possibly leave town just now. Of course, if you're in any danger, I could, but you really are better, dear. Whether you can see it or not, I'm a doctor, dear, and I know. Better in body, perhaps, I began, and I stopped short, for he sat up straight and he looked at me with such a stern, reproachful look that I could not say another word. My darling, he said, I beg of you, for my sake and for our child's sake, as well as for your own, that you will never, for one instant, let that idea enter your mind. There's nothing so dangerous, so fascinating to a temperament like yours. It is a false and foolish fancy. Can you not trust me as a physician when I tell you so? So, of course, I said no more on that score. We went to sleep before long. He thought I was asleep at first, but I wasn't. I lay there for hours trying to decide whether the front pattern and the back pattern really did move together or separately. On a pattern like this, by daylight, there is a lack of sequence. It's a defiance of law, a constant irritant to a normal mind. The color, it is hideous enough and unreliable enough, infuriating enough, but the pattern is torturing. I mean, you think you've mastered it, but just as you get well underway in following it, it turns a back somersault, and there you are. There you are. It slaps you in the face, knocks you down. It tramples upon you. It's like a bad dream. The outside pattern. It's a florid arabesque. It reminds one of a fungus. If you could imagine it, a toadstool, budding and sprouting in endless convolution. What that is something like it. That is sometimes. There is one marked peculiarity about this paper. It's a thing nobody seems to notice but me, and that is that it changes as the light changes. And when the sun shoots in through the east window, I watch it. I watch it for that first long straight ray. It catches so quickly, and I just can never quite believe it, because that's why I watch it always. By moonlight? Oh, the moon shines in. It's all night. Well, when there is a moon, and I wouldn't know that it was the same paper at night. It's in any kind of light. It's twilight. It's candlelight, lamplight. Worst of all, by moonlight, it becomes bars. The outside pattern, and the woman behind it as plain as can be. And I didn't realize it for a long time what the thing was that showed behind the dim sub-pattern. But now I'm quite sure it is a woman. And by daylight she is subdued, quiet. I fancy it is the pattern that keeps her still. It's so puzzling. It keeps me quiet by the hour. I lie down ever so much now. John says it's good for me and to sleep all I can. And indeed, he started the habit. He by making me lie down for an hour after each meal. Oh, it's very bad. It's a very bad habit. I'm convinced. For I don't sleep, and then that cultivates deceit. And then I don't tell them I'm awake. Oh no! The fact is I'm getting a little afraid of John. He seems very queer sometimes, and even Jenny has this inexplicable look. It just strikes me occasionally. Just it's a scientific hypothesis that sometimes, but perhaps it is the paper. I've watched John when he did not know I was looking and come into the room suddenly and on the most, innocent excuses. And I have caught him several times looking at the paper. And Jenny, too. I caught Jenny with her hand on it once. And she didn't know. She didn't know I was in the room. And when I asked her in quiet, very quiet voice, very quiet, most restrained manner possible, what she was doing with the paper, and she turned around as if like she'd been caught stealing, and she looked quite angry, and she asked me why I should frighten her so. And then, and then she said that the paper stained everything it touched. Oh, and that she found yellow smooches on all my clothes and John's, and she wished that we would be more careful. Did not that sound innocent? Oh, but I know that she was studying that pattern, and I'm determined that nobody shall find it out but myself. Life is very much more exciting now than it used to be. You see, I have something more to expect, to look forward to watch. I really do eat better, and I am quieter than I was before. Oh, John, he is so pleased to see me improve. He laughed a little the other day, and he said I seemed to be flourishing in spite of the wallpaper. Oh, God. Oh, I turned it off with a laugh because I had no intention of telling him. It was because of the wallpaper. He'd make fun of me, and he might want to take me away. Oh, God, I just don't want to leave now until I have found it out. Oh, there is 1 week more, and I think that will be enough. I'm feeling ever so much better. I don't sleep much at night, for it is so interesting to watch developments, but I sleep a good deal in the daytime. In the daytime, it is tiresome and perplexing. It is the strangest yellow, that wallpaper. It makes me think of all the yellow things I ever saw. Not the beautiful ones like buttercups, but old, foul, bad, yellow things. But there is something else about that paper. That smell. Well, I noticed it the moment we came into the room, but with so much air and sun, it wasn't bad. But now we've had a week of fog and rain, and whether the windows are open or not, that smell is here. It creeps all over the house. I find it hovering in the dining room, skulking in the parlor, hiding in the hall, lying in wait for me on the stairs. It gets in my hair. Such a peculiar odor, too, because I've spent hours trying to analyze it to find out what it smelled like. It's not bad at first. It's very gentle, but quite the subtlest, most enduring odor I have ever met. In this damp weather, it is awful. I wake up in the night and I find it hanging over me. It used to disturb me at first. Well, I thought seriously of burning the house to reach the smell. But now I'm used to it. Well, the only thing I can think of that it's like is the color of the paper. A yellow smell. There's a very funny mark on this wall, low down near the mop board. It's a streak that runs round the room. It goes behind every piece of furniture except the bed, a long, straight, even smooch, as if it had been rubbed over and over. I wonder how it was done and who did it. What they did it for. Round and round and round and round and round and round and round. Oh, it makes me dizzy. I really have discovered something at last. Through watching so much at night when it changes, I have finally found out. The front pattern does move. And no wonder. The woman behind shakes it. And there are a great many women behind it, and sometimes only one as she crawls around fast, and her crawling shakes it all over. Then in the very bright spot, she keeps still, and in the very shady spot, she just takes hold of the bars and she just shakes them hard. And she is all the time trying to climb through, but nobody could climb through that pattern. It strangles so, and I think that's why it has so many heads. Well, they get through, and then the pattern strangles them off and turns them upside down and makes their eyes white. If those heads were covered or taken off, it would not be half so bad. I think that woman gets out in the daytime. I'll tell you why. Privately. I've seen her. I can see her out of every one of my windows. It is the same woman. I know, for she's always creeping, and most women do not creep by daylight. Oh, I see her. I see her on that long shaded lane. She's creeping up and down. Oh, I see her in the dark grape arbors. She's creeping around the gardens. I see her on the long road under the trees. She's creeping along. And when a carriage comes, she hides. She hides under the blackberry vines. I don't blame her a bit. It must be very humiliating to be caught creeping by daylight. I always lock the door when I creep by daylight. Well, I can't do it at night, for I know John would suspect at once. And John is so queer now. I mean, I don't want to irritate him. I wish he would take another room. Besides, I don't want anybody to get that woman out at night but myself. Oh, I wonder if I could see her out all the windows at once. I turn as fast as I can. I can only see out of one at a time. And I always see her. She may be able to creep faster than I can turn. Oh, I've watched her sometimes away off in the open country. She's creeping as fast as a cloud shadow in high wind. She's like, whoosh. If only that top pattern could be gotten off from the under one. I mean to try, little by little. I've found out another funny thing, but I shan't tell it this time. It does not do to trust people too much. There are 2 more days to get the paper off, and I believe John is beginning to notice. I don't like the look in his eyes. And I have heard him ask Jenny a lot of professional questions about me. She had a very good report. She said I slept a good deal in the daytime. Ah! John knows. I don't sleep very well at night, for I'm so quiet. He asked me all sorts of questions, too, and pretended to be loving, so very loving and kind, as if I couldn't see through him. Still, I just wonder he acts so. You know, sleeping under this paper for 3 months. It only interests me, but I feel sure John and Jenny are secretly affected by it. Hurrah! Hurrah! This is the last day, but it is enough. John is to stay in town overnight and won't be out until this evening. Jenny wanted to sleep with me, the sly thing, but I told her I should undoubtedly rest better for a night, all alone. That was clever, for I wasn't alone a bit. As soon as it was moonlight and that poor thing began to crawl and shake the pattern, I got up and ran to help her. And I pulled and she shook. I shook and she pulled. And before morning, we had peeled off yards of that paper. It was a strip about as high as my head and half round the room. And then the sun came and that awful pattern began to laugh at me. I declared that I would finish it today. Oh, no. We go away tomorrow. We're moving all my furniture down again to leave things as they were before. Jenny looked at that wall in amazement, but I told her merrily that I did it out of pure spite at the vicious thing. She laughed. Oh, she laughed. She said she wouldn't mind doing it herself, but I must not get tired. She betrayed herself that time. But I am here. I am here, and no person touches this paper but me, not alive. She tried to get me out of the room, but I said it was so quiet and empty and clean. I believed I would lie down again and sleep all I could, and not to wake me, even for dinner. I would call when I woke. So now she's gone, And the servants are gone, and the things are gone, and there is nothing left but that great bedstead nailed down with the canvas mattress we found on it. Oh, I quite enjoy the room now that it is bare again. Oh, how those children did tear about here. This bedstead is fairly gnawed, but I must get to work. I've locked the door, and I've thrown the key down onto the front path. I don't want to go out, and I don't want to have anybody come in. Not till John comes. I want to astonish him. I've got a rope up here that even Jenny did not find. If that woman does get out and tries to get away, I can tie her. But I forgot I could not reach far without anything to stand on, because this bed will not move. And I tried to lift it and push it until I was lame. I got so angry I just bit off a piece of the corner, and it hurt my teeth. And then I peeled off all the paper I could reach, standing on the floor, and it sticks horribly, and that pattern just enjoys it. It's all those strangled heads and those bulbous eyes and waddling fungus growths. They just shriek with derision. And I'm just getting angry. I'm getting angry enough to do something desperate. To jump out the window would be an admirable exercise, but the bars are too strong to even try. Besides, I would not do it. Of course not. I know well enough that a step like that is improper, and it might be misconstrued. I don't like to look out the windows even. There are so many of those creeping women, and they creep so fast. I wonder if they all come out of the wallpaper as I did. Oh, but I am securely fastened now by my well-hidden rope. You don't get me out in the road there. I suppose I shall have to get back behind the pattern when it becomes night, and that is hard. Oh, it is so pleasant to be out in this great room and creep around as I please. I don't want to go outside. I won't, even if Jenny asks me to. For outside you have to creep on the ground, and everything is green instead of yellow. But here, I can creep smoothly on the floor, and my shoulder just fits in that long smooch around the wall, so I cannot lose my way. I've got out at last, you see, in spite of John and Jenny. And I've pulled off most of the paper, so they can't put me back in.
Thank you for listening to Bruka Theater's free presentation of The Yellow Wallpaper, directed by Holly Natwora, featuring Mary Bennett, with technical direction and design by David Simpson. The Yellow Wallpaper is available on Bruka Theater's YouTube page and Bruka's podcast channel, Bruka Bridge. We invite you to subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channels for upcoming productions. If you would like to support Bruka Theater, please go to www.bruka.org to make a donation, sign up for our newsletter, or go to our online shop and pick up some cool swag. Bruka Theater has been closed to the public for 1 year as of this announcement due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but has continued to provide virtual theatrical offerings to our community. This project is supported by patron donations, our artists, the City of Reno, the Nevada Arts Council, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the CARES Act. Your support and enjoyment keeps our art alive.